Hey, good Wednesday afternoon, everybody. Welcome into Trail Tidbits, a Volquest mini recruiting podcast. I'm Eric Kane alongside with Matt Ray. Tennessee football 3-0, about to hit the road. First SEC game of the season for Tennessee, first SEC game ever for Oklahoma. Storylines galore in Norman, Oklahoma this weekend, and should be a good one. But let's talk a little recruiting. We'll go back to the Kent State win, not talking about the win, 71-0 in record-breaking fashion for Tennessee, but a couple of commitments were on hand to watch that showdown for Tennessee. Some prospects as well. You had David Sanders in-house. You had Ethan Utley in-house. You had Sidney Walton in-house. And a 26 prospect that's teammates of David Sanders, Leo Delaney, was also in-house. And, of course, Tennessee's very much after him, Matt Ray.
Yeah, Leo Delaney back in Knoxville with his family for the fourth time this year. They quietly slid over to town in June. He was here in the spring for a spring practice as well, and then he was here during the winter for a junior day. So Tennessee continued to lay a lot of groundwork for Leo Delaney to this point. Josh Heupel and Glenn Ellerby were out at Providence Day on Friday night ahead of the Kent State game to see Delaney, David Sanders, and Kendra Harrison, who was still there at the time, is now transferred back to Reidsville. Tennessee was there to see those three guys, and that was something I think for Delaney that impressed him, that they were there for his game the night before he was coming over to Knoxville. Now, this was his first opportunity to make it to Tennessee for a game. He wasn't really sure what to expect going in. He had heard a lot about it, but through the first half, really, it was really loud in there, Eric. You know as well as I do that Tennessee, fans, especially on third down, were in mid-season form, and I think that caught Leo Delaney by surprise. He was really blown away by the atmosphere. He and his family plan to make it back to town for the Alabama game, and he's really excited about that as it stands. But Delaney, a guy for this Tennessee staff that they really covet, they really like. He's played opposite of David Sanders, played beside David Sanders at Providence Day, does a lot of different things, but a really athletic 2026 offensive lineman that's really high on Tennessee's board that they continue to get to town. And I think he's continuing to build a rapport with guys in the 2025 class, getting to know Faison Brandon more, and he's just becoming more comfortable with his staff in general.
Yeah, you see him over here on the huddle tape. If you're watching on YouTube, he's playing a little defense, and as you mentioned, playing opposite of big number 70, that being David Sanders. Leo Delaney, a priority target, no doubt, for the class of 2026. So we kind of spoke a little bit on some of those commits who were on hand, David Sanders and Ethan Utley, Sidney Walton. Let's go into another Tennessee commit right now that's getting a little bit of buzz in terms of the Georgia Bulldogs and all that. A really talented linebacker in Christian Gass. What's the latest on Tennessee's commitments from the linebacker ranks?
Yeah, so we did talk about Christian Gass last week on Trail Tidbits, which was just a few days after he had made the trip over to Georgia. And the reason for that was because of the fact that I was going to go over there and see him the following day after the taping. So kind of really just wanted to get in front of him and get a feel for where things stand. And it was kind of the same that I felt over the weekend once he was at Georgia. I had a pretty lengthy conversation, with Christian Gass over the weekend just about what made him want to go check Georgia out again, where he felt like things were. And he was very adamant that he's locked into Tennessee. And, he's a guy that, I think Tennessee, did such a good job with early on that those relationships are there. There's really no reason to doubt that. But anytime you go to another campus, it always at least leads to a little bit of concern, and Christian Gass is aware of that. He's aware that he made buzz on social media and those types of things, and he's not the kind of kid that is necessarily into that area. So he was very open and adamant with me that he's most definitely locked in with Tennessee. He's got a strong relationship with Coach Chop, Lavorne Harbin, William Inge, Josh Heupel. The way they've recruited him as a whole has been big for him. He'll be back to Tennessee in October for the Florida game and the Alabama game. Wouldn't rule out the chance that he does slide back over to Georgia again and watch them play Auburn later in the year. We'll see what ends up happening there. Obviously, those are conversations that are ongoing. Tennessee will try to stop that visit from happening, try to remind him, like, hey, you've gone over there, you've checked out a game day now, you've been here. You're locked in with us. There's really no point in going back over there. But for Christian Gass, going to Georgia for that Tennessee Tech game, he had never been to a game before, Eric. He'd never been to a college game. Tennessee and Georgia both offered him on the same day in December of 2023. The college football season, in terms of visits, is over at that point.
Yeah.
He wasn't able to get out on the road and see those places. He picked the Vols over Georgia shortly after official visits in June. He made unofficial visits to both places. He looked at the football fit. He looked at the relationship side of things. He's big on life after football. All of those things lined up for him at Tennessee. Tennessee's going to get to host him for 2 electric atmospheres. He'll get a chance to see it again in person. And the more we've asked around this week about Christian Gass, Tennessee still got a good level of confidence about where things stand with him, even with, the Bulldogs, the in-state school, knowing that they're going to recruit him to the finish line. It continues to feel like right now, at least here in September, Tennessee's got a really good chance of holding on to Christian Gass.
Yeah, we're sitting here watching the highlight tape, and we know the type of player he is. He's been committed to Tennessee for quite some time, but you're just reminded, about the versatility. He's out of the box, he's in the box, he's down on the edge a little bit. The guy really does have a lot of tools in the tool belt there. Tennessee sees him as an in the box backer, but Matt, that versatility, third down packaging. You see Keenan Peely move around a little bit as well. This is a guy that William Minge and Tennessee feels like they can do a number of different things with, correct?
I got it. Like you said, Keenan Peely, Tennessee moves all around the box. I've seen him do it a little bit with Arion Carter. Christian Gass has more length than those guys. At this point, he's a guy that some schools looked at as an edge early on. She said Tennessee likes him there in the box, but man, he can do a lot of different things. There's a lot of different types of roles that he can play depending on what package he's in. He's a pure football player, really learning the game as a linebacker from outside in here. And he'll be quick to tell you that, he feels like his game has so much more to go because he's learning different things. He's learning the leverage piece. He's learning, a lot of the pursuit pieces there at Eastside High School. Just an immense ceiling for him, a guy that, surged into the top 100 for the On3 rankings in 2025 and is, most likely going to stay there throughout. So a lot of versatility for a guy like Christian Gass, especially when you pair him in this class with a guy like Jaden Harmon, who is a downhill thumper, but can also play out in space as well.
When you're recruiting well, when you're winning ball games, when things are going well, then, other teams are going to come knocking, right? You wouldn't be recruiting the right caliber of player if the Georgias, the Alabamas, the Floridas, the LSUs weren't knocking, trying to come down your door. We've seen there with Georgia, with Christian Gass, and a lot of buzz here lately with Travis Smith and Auburn and some others. You talked to Travis Smith. He had some pretty strong statements on where he is with the University of Tennessee.
Yeah, the Auburn news, I think, caught Travis Smith and his family a little bit by surprise. But, at the end of the day, they've been trying to get him over there. They really thought they had a chance to get him over there for that, visit weekend that they had lined up for Cal with Deuce Knight coming back to town, some other top, priorities coming back to town, guys that Travis knew. But, he made it pretty clear to us that he wasn't going over there. He had no plans to go over there. And for whatever reason, Auburn and Georgia both feel like that, they still have a chance to flip him, but that's not going to happen. And, in large part due to the relationship that, he has with Kelsey Pope that went out for Tennessee early on in that recruitment. And, Travis Smith, I think everything's starting to continue to line up more for him. He saw it again this weekend when he was on campus. I'm down on the field on Saturdays. Mike Matthews checks into that game early, and you hear from the recruiting section somebody going wild. You think it's a Mike Matthews family member. It's Travis Smith. He's screaming at Mike, encouraging him, you just hopped up for a guy that was big for him during the recruiting process. Mike Matthews was big for Travis Smith during the recruiting process. They faced a lot of the same things. You really want to leave the state of Georgia. They had a lot of different conversations. Man, Travis Smith is a guy that I think saw what Tennessee does, how they use those receivers. They got in some 10 personnel on Saturday, Eric.
Yeah.
Against Kent State. So you had five wideouts out there, and Tennessee 4 wideouts out there. Tennessee doing, multiple different things in terms of, creating opportunities for younger guys. Mike Matthew had an impressive touchdown catch. Travis Smith's paying attention to all of that. He is dialed in. He's focused. Kelsey Pope was out to his game on Friday night at Westlake High School to watch him. Just reiterated to him again what a priority that he was. Auburn, Georgia, we'll see who else continues to try to come into the mix for Travis Smith throughout his senior season here. And, oh, by the way, a senior season where Westlake right now is 2-3 on the season, but Travis Smith is leading the state of Georgia in multiple receiving categories. So, again, when you recruit those types of players, programs like that aren't going to go away. Georgia obviously being the in-state program, Auburn not that far away at Westlake, and then an obvious connection to Westlake High School through Cam Newton, who played quarterback at Westlake High School. So that's a school that Auburn likes to go into and recruit. And at the end of the day, you're exactly right. If you're going to recruit those elite types of players, you have to expect those elite types of programs to come knocking, regardless of commitment status. Because in today's day and age, you recruit guys to the finish line until they've signed, and you don't relent because you never know what will happen. But Tennessee's feeling confident with where they are with Travis Smith, and he's loving his commitment right now, to say the least.
Last bit of business here on this week's edition of Trail Tidbits. The new rendition, the new installment of the On 300 rankings came out earlier this week, Matt, and you had 14 commits for the University of Tennessee that were present inside that top 300. Highlight David Sanders, no change at number 6. So he's literally one of the best players in the country. So he was up there. Marion Dye was highlighted up there. He moved up 15 spots, I believe, up into about the top 50 or somewhere around there. Travis Smith is considered still a top 60 prospect. Some guys move around a little bit. That's just the nature of recruiting rankings. But 14 inside of the On 300, that's a pretty good pretty good showing. And, of course, David Sanders being a top 10 player, that looks good on Tennessee's staff.
Yeah, that's a pretty good showing, Eric, when you look at Tennessee's class as a whole, knowing that, down the line, some of those guys, a Dylan Lewis, a Tyler Redmond, some of those guys that aren't as highly rated, Tennessee locked those guys in really early. Tennessee locked Lewis and Redmond into this class early, and they love what they've got in those guys. They love the opportunity they have to develop those guys and mold those guys and make them fit into this defense down the line. So guys that necessarily didn't camp, and I've said this probably the exact same line on Trail Tidbits before, call any high school coach in the state of Georgia and ask them if they want to play against Milton secondary with Dylan Lewis and Tyler Redmond. I promise you they don't. Like those guys for the better part of 2.5 years now have been shutting down opposing wide receivers. So, you've got a top-heavy group of those 14 guys inside the On 300. You've got multiple offensive line commits inside the On 300, multiple defensive line commits inside the On 300. Both of your linebackers are inside the top 125. You got 2 receivers inside the top 100. I mean, it wasn't a huge update, but it just shows for Tennessee the depth of this class. I mean, you got George McIntyre, who is a really good football player, a really good quarterback with such a high ceiling, and he's your 3rd highest rated player in the industry rankings, and maybe your 4th or 5th in the On 3 rankings. So that tells you how deep this class is.
Yeah, no doubt. And tell me if my math is wrong, Matt, but I believe 14 in the On 300, 7 in the top 100, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's getting it done, no doubt. All right, man. Obviously, an away game this week at Oklahoma. Tennessee's actually away from Neyland Stadium for quite some time. Morgan Wallen's going to have that concert, plenty of time for that grass for that playing surface to get back to where it needs to be. What's next in recruiting for Tennessee? Obviously, emphasis on 26, but still trying to fend off some of those teams coming for your recruits and maybe finding another guy or two in this class of 25. I know there's specifically a Florida commitment that could get dicey there if there's a coaching change.
Yeah, you'll see some Tennessee coaches trickle out on the road here. Over the next couple of weeks, we'll see. They'll continue to be pretty strategic with that. obviously a night game with Oklahoma, so you might have a coach or two have an opportunity to see some kids out in the Midwest. There are guys that obviously Tennessee values out there. Um, I think in 2026 specifically, Taj Overton in Oklahoma is certainly a name to know along the defensive line board. They'll get out and continue to check on commitments, and then really, it's gearing up as far as recruiting goes for October 12th and October 19th when
Yep.
Alabama and Florida come to town. Those visitor lists are going to be very, very impressive, and you're going to have guys that probably Tennessee doesn't even know of at this point coming to town, because that's just the nature of the beast. I mean, you look back to a couple of years ago, nobody really expected Jarrett Gibson to show up the second time, for the Alabama game when he did. The hope was to get him to town for the Florida game, and then you turn around and he's right back there again. So that stuff happens when you have big games inside of your home stadium, and Tennessee certainly has two big ones coming up in October. But those weekends already of guys that have confirmed that they're going to be there or planning to be there are huge weekends.
Tennessee football season's happening right now. Of course, there's an offseason for football, but there's never an offseason for recruiting. And Tennessee's staff is one of the best in the country, certainly in this cycle, and off to a great start in 2026. Big weekends coming up at Neyland Stadium in a couple of weeks, October 12th and 19th, as Matt just pointed out. We'll have continuous coverage from Austin Price, Matt Ray of Tennessee football recruiting every single day, Volquest.com and on the General's Quarters. For Matt Ray, I'm Eric Kane. Appreciate you guys for tuning in each and every week right here at Volquest.com for Trail Tidbits.